My husband's ex is our new nanny. I didn't know she was still sleeping with him every afternoon in our guest room. I'm a 35-year-old woman, married for 6 years to Adrian. We have 2 young kids, Eva is 5, and Jules is 3. I work full-time in logistics, long hours, stressful days, and when our previous nanny quit out of nowhere, I was on the edge of a breakdown. Adrian works from home, technically freelance graphic design, but honestly, I carry the bulk of our financial life. I always have. That's what made me miss it, I think. Too tired. Too trusting. Too damn grateful that someone was suddenly available when we were drowning. Adrian had a solution. He said it like that, I think I've got a solution. He told me he'd run into an old friend, someone he knew from before, who had just moved back into the area. She was between jobs, good with kids, and super discreet. He said her name was Claire. At the time, I didn't ask more. I just said yes. Because I had a meeting at 8 a.m. the next day, a presentation to finish, and no one to drop the kids at school. She showed up the next morning, all warm smiles and energy. Blonde, tall, confident, she brought her own snacks for the kids. Played guitar. Knew how to braid Eva's hair perfectly. The kids loved her by day 2. And Adrian? He was glowing. I told myself it was just relief. That we'd found someone competent. That he was happy to not have to juggle breakfast, drop-offs, and work. But some things started to feel off. She always arrived 5 minutes early. Never rang the bell. Always let herself in. She knew where we kept the extra key. I hadn't told her. One afternoon I came home early, around 4:30 p.m. I had a migraine and told my manager I was leaving. When I walked in, the house was silent. Too silent. The kids were asleep. In their rooms. And Claire's bag was in the hallway. Adrian's door, his office, was closed. I knocked. Silence. Then some scuffling. Like papers, a chair moving. When he opened it, his face was flushed. Claire was sitting on the couch in the office. She smiled. Hi. Jules fell asleep watching cartoons, so I figured I'd hang out a bit. I didn't think much of it. Not that day. But later that night, Adrian initiated sex. It had been a while. And it felt strange. Fast. Detached. Afterward, he went straight to the shower. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, and I suddenly remembered something. Claire had used that same brand of perfume back when we were dating. I remembered it because Adrian once joked, "You'll never smell like her, she's a walking Sephora." Back when Claire was his ex. I got out of bed, went downstairs, and opened my laptop. I typed her full name into Facebook. She had blocked me. Blocked. I used Eva's school iPad to open her Instagram. It was private. But the profile picture? It was her. And Adrian liked it. A recent post. From our backyard. The next day, I confronted him. I didn't yell, I didn't accuse. I just asked, "Is our nanny Claire the same Claire you used to date before me?" He froze. Then, yeah. But it was nothing serious. Years ago. I didn't want to stress you out, that's why I didn't mention it. He made it sound harmless. Like I was being paranoid. He even laughed. Don't tell me you're jealous now? But that night, I barely slept. Because the puzzle pieces were starting to fall into place, and what they formed was terrifying. She knew our routines too well. She spoke to him in a tone that wasn't nanny to dad, it was familiar. Playful. Possessive. And when I left for work the next morning, something in me couldn't help but look back through the window. They were in the kitchen. She was standing close. He wasn't stepping back. I was watching my life burn down in slow motion, and I couldn't decide if I was crazy. Or just finally seeing the truth. I started paying attention. I mean really paying attention, not just glancing at things in passing, but watching. listening, timing things. The next few days, I acted like nothing was wrong. Like I had believed Adrian when he said their past was nothing serious. I smiled at Claire. Asked about the kids' day. Thanked her for staying late. And in the background, I was building a mental file. Every time I called from the office and Claire answered instead of Adrian, even when I had called his phone. Every time I got home and the guest room door was closed, though supposedly no one used it. Every time I noticed Adrian had showered in the afternoon, even though he hadn't left the house. I even checked the towels once. The ones in the guest bathroom were always damp when I got home. But the moment I truly snapped wasn't even about sex. It was about Jules. One evening, as I was putting him to bed, I kissed his forehead and said, "You smell nice, baby." "What did you put on?" He said, "Claire puts perfume on me. She says it's the same Daddy likes." I swear to God my heart stopped. The next day, I left work early again. This time I didn't tell anyone. I drove home with my stomach in knots. I parked 2 streets away and walked the rest in silence. No shoes on. No sound. The door was locked, but I had my keys. It was 2:48 p.m. I stepped inside and heard nothing. Dead silence. The kind that's too clean. I walked through the living room. The kitchen. Nobody. Then I reached the guest room. The door was closed. I pressed my ear against it. I didn't hear sex. No moaning. Nothing dramatic. I heard whispers. Low. Intimate. The kind of voice you use when you're inches from someone's face. I knocked. Once. Silence. I waited 10 seconds, then opened the door. And there they were. Adrian. Shirtless. Claire, sitting on the bed, feet bare, holding his t-shirt in her hands like she was folding it, except she wasn't. They both froze like 2 kids caught smoking behind the gym. No one said anything. I turned around. Walked out. Closed the door. Then I took a video of myself on the front steps. Just my face. Just my voice. This is me. Wednesday, 2:52 p.m. I just caught my husband in the guest room with our nanny, his ex-girlfriend. He told me she was just helping. He lied. Then I walked to my car, drove to the office, and threw up in the parking lot. The rage didn't come immediately. That's the funny thing. It was more like ice. Cold, detached disgust. That evening, Adrian acted normal. Claire left early, supposedly to see her cousin. He made pasta. Asked me about my day. I waited until the kids were asleep. Then I showed him the video. He stared at it. Blinked. Said, "It's not what you think." I laughed. Laughed so hard I cried. Then I said, "You have 1 hour to leave this house. You can tell them you're going to the store. I don't care, but if you don't walk out, I will tell Eva exactly why the nanny won't be coming back." He packed in silence. Claire didn't return. But she did call. The next day. She had the audacity to say, "He told me you two were separated. That he was only staying for the kids." I didn't even respond. I just blocked her. But it was too late. The damage was done. My children had been living under the same roof as the woman who was still sleeping with their father, while pretending to be their second mother. And I had welcomed her into our home. Paid her. Thanked her. Trusted her. I wasn't angry yet. I was still grieving the person I had been before all of this. The one who thought she could spot a lie. The one who thought love was enough. But the anger was coming. And when it did, I was going to burn everything they built. The first week after Adrian left felt like limbo. He moved into his friend Lucas's place for now, and kept asking to see the kids. At first I said yes, out of guilt, maybe, but I noticed he never asked to have them alone. He only wanted to come help with bedtime, bring them snacks, make himself visible. Like he wanted to control the narrative. Like he was preparing a campaign. I was too smart for that now. Claire never came back. Obviously, but her presence still lingered in everything, the smell of her perfume in the guest room sheets, the song she taught Eva that Eva kept humming under her breath, the pink phone charger I found under the couch. I threw it all away in a single garbage bag and didn't even flinch. But the worst part? My daughter kept asking where she went. Why doesn't Claire pick me up anymore? Is Claire mad at me? Can I call Claire to tell her my drawing won a star? I wanted to scream every time. But I smiled. I told her Claire got a new job. That we were proud of her. I refused to let Claire infect my daughter with her poison. Meanwhile, Adrian started getting bold. He texted me late one night, "Can we talk like adults? I miss the kids. And I miss you too. Please don't throw everything away." Everything. I was throwing it away? That's when I snapped. I replied with just one line, "Tell me, Adrian, how many times did she lie next to you in our bed after touching my children goodnight?" He didn't reply. 2 days later, I received a letter from a mediator. Adrian wanted to discuss custody arrangements. He claimed I was being emotionally manipulative, blocking contact, refusing his rights. He was playing dirty now. So I played smarter. I gathered every piece of evidence I had. Photos. Timestamps. My little video diary. Then I hired a lawyer. A serious one. She didn't blink when I explained the whole situation. She just said, "We'll bury him in paperwork before he even knows what hit him." I didn't want revenge. I wanted protection. I wanted control back. But here's the part one didn't expect. Claire wasn't done. One evening, while the kids were watching a cartoon, my phone buzzed. A private number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was her. She said, "You're not blameless, you know." I said nothing. She continued, "You pushed him away." I just picked up the pieces. You're so cold. So self-righteous. Maybe if you gave him a little more attention, he wouldn't have come back to me. I hung up. Blocked the number. Then I went into the bathroom and threw up. Not because I believed her, but because a part of me used to. That was the depth of their manipulation. The rot they planted, but that night, I did something I hadn't done in months. I opened my journal. Wrote for 3 hours straight. I wrote about how Adrian had started pulling away after Jules was born. How he used my exhaustion as an excuse to stop showing up emotionally. How Claire had smiled at me while sleeping with my husband 3 doors down. I wrote until I was shaking. And then I realized, my story wasn't rare. Too many women get used like this. Gaslit. Lied to. Replaced while still standing in the room. But I wasn't going to disappear. He wanted to drag me into a custody war? Fine, but I'd make sure the judge knew exactly the kind of woman he trusted around our children. And the kind of man he'd become. The first court session was informal, a mediation setup, not a full custody battle yet. But Adrian showed up with a smirk like he thought this was still just some emotional misunderstanding. Like I was going to cry and beg for peace. Instead, I handed over a printed dossier. A timeline. Screenshots. Statements. Everything. The mediator didn't even hide her reaction when she read that the nanny he had hired, his ex, had been caught in the guest room with him during working hours, while under our roof, and while being paid to care for our children. He tried to interrupt, said something about boundaries being misinterpreted. She raised a hand. "Mr. Leroy, are you denying that you had a prior romantic relationship with Claire Dumas before she was hired as your children's nanny?" He hesitated. Then muttered, "No." "Are you denying that you resumed a sexual relationship with her during her employment?" Silence. She marked something down and said, "Then please stop trying to turn this into an emotional dispute." This is a case involving child care and potential breach of trust. That was the first time I saw Adrian sweat. After the session, he caught up to me in the parking lot. "You didn't have to humiliate me in front of a stranger." I turned to him and said, "You slept with your ex in the house our kids live in. Every ounce of humiliation you feel, you earned." And I got in my car and left. It would have felt good, empowering, even if not for what happened next. Eva had a nightmare that night. She cried for Claire, sobbing that Claire used to sing her lullabies and that now Mommy made her go away. I held her for 2 hours. My shirt soaked with her tears. And I hated them both for it, Adrian and Claire, for making me the villain in my daughter's story. I started therapy the next week. Not because I was broken, but because I needed someone neutral. Someone who wouldn't say, "At least you found out," or "Be strong, you're a mother." I needed space to unravel the sheer violation of what had happened. I told the therapist about everything. And when I got to the part about how Claire said I'd pushed him away, I started crying so violently I had to stop. Because I realized I had pushed him away. But not because I stopped loving him. Because I was surviving. Working, waking up 3 times a night. Managing groceries, school paperwork, fevers, lice outbreaks, missed bills, and a body that hadn't felt like mine in years. He didn't just cheat. He abandoned me. Then handed the keys to the one woman who knew exactly how to make me feel small. Claire had always been the fantasy, free-spirited, beautiful, uninhibited. She played guitar. She wore silk robes. She knew her angles. And I had been the one packing lunches at 6 a.m. with spit up on my shirt. That contrast? He chose it. He fed it. And now he wanted joint custody? Weekend visits like we were splitting a bank account? No. I asked my lawyer to push for supervised visits only. Adrian fought it. Of course he did. But the mediator had read enough to see through his harmless misjudgment narrative. She ruled in my favor. For now. And I finally slept through the night. Until 3 weeks later, when I found out Claire had posted a photo of my kids on her private Instagram. Hashtags like hashtag little angels and hashtag miss you. I wasn't even tagged. But the caption said it all. "Some people don't understand the love between a nanny and her babies. I'll always protect you, no matter what your mother says." I reported the post. Took screenshots. Sent them to my lawyer. But that wasn't enough. Because something had shifted in me. This wasn't just a custody battle anymore. This was war. And I was ready to destroy every illusion they had tried to build. The Instagram post changed everything. Not legally, at least not yet. But psychologically, emotionally, it was the last drop. Seeing my children's faces, stolen and used as some kind of moral prop by the woman who had slept with my husband under my roof, that woke something in me I didn't know existed. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even confront her. I documented. I archived. I built a case. My lawyer told me, "You want to make sure there's no wiggle room. You want it airtight? Then we go beyond emotional betrayal. We prove recklessness." So that's what we did. I started talking to Eva more carefully. Not coaching her, just listening. Like, when she said Claire used to take naps with Daddy sometimes when Jules was at daycare, I noted it down. When she mentioned that Claire once picked her up from preschool without me or Adrian telling me in advance, I asked the school to confirm. They did. No one had cleared it. Claire wasn't even officially registered as a guardian. And still, she had taken my daughter. That was the thread I needed. The legal one. The one that turned betrayal into negligence. Meanwhile, Adrian tried to play peacemaker. He started sending gifts for the kids, puzzles, books, a giant stuffed bear that Jules immediately hugged like it was made of gold. I almost mailed it back. But then I realized how bitter that would look in court. So I let the kids keep the toys, and made sure every single one was photographed, noted, and filed. He was building a story. Look, I'm still a great dad. And I was building the real one. He created an unsafe emotional environment, let an unstable ex into our children's lives, and now uses gifts to manipulate the outcome. One night, I found a message on Facebook from a woman I didn't recognize. It read, "You don't know me. But I used to live with Claire in Marseille. Be careful. She's done this before." My blood ran cold. I replied instantly, asking her to explain. She told me Claire had had a relationship with another married man years ago. That she got close to the family through babysitting. That she manipulated the kids to get to the man. Eventually, the marriage collapsed, and Claire posted cryptic poetry about being betrayed by a coward who couldn't choose love. Sound familiar? This woman even sent me screenshots of old tweets. Claire writing things like, if the wife was really good to him, he wouldn't look elsewhere. And children are pure. They know who really loves them. That was the final nail. My lawyer requested an emergency review. The judge agreed to revisit the case with the new evidence. When Adrian was notified, he showed up at my door. Not Lucas's apartment. Not a phone call. He showed up. He didn't yell. He didn't plead. He just stood there with that same boyish look he'd used on me for years. And he said, "Claire's gone. She moved." I ended it. I asked, "Why are you telling me this?" He said, "Because I miss you. I miss our life." I didn't know how far things had gone. I was stupid. I panicked. I looked at him for a long time. Really looked. This was the man who used to bring me soup when I had the flu. The man who cried when Eva was born. The man who once held my hand in the dark and promised he'd never break my heart. And now he was standing here, hoping I'd forget that he let another woman rewrite our story. I said, "Adrian, this isn't about you missing me. This is about you missing control." He didn't reply. I closed the door. I didn't cry. I didn't feel victorious. I felt clean. Like something had been cut out of me. Something infected. But it wasn't over. Because a week later, I found out that Adrian had enrolled himself in co-parenting classes. Voluntarily. And something in my stomach turned cold again. Because I realized, he wasn't done playing the long game. He was going to paint himself as the changed man. And I had to be ready. Because some people don't stop after betrayal. They try to rebrand it as growth. Adrian's co-parenting classes weren't just a gesture. They were a strategy. He started sharing posts on LinkedIn about emotional maturity and how fathers can rebuild after failure. One of them got hundreds of likes. A mutual friend sent it to me and said, "Wow, he's really working on himself. Good for him." I wanted to scream. The same man who'd let his ex stroke his ego, and more, while our kids napped upstairs, was now out there as a poster dad for redemption arcs? Worse, he'd applied for visitation rights to be unsupervised again. My lawyer called me and said, "He's got a good PR game going. It won't hold in court, but be ready, he's building a public image for a reason." It was working. Even Eva's teacher mentioned it. He seems so devoted when he picks them up. He even brought cupcakes last week for the whole class. Cupcakes. Like that was supposed to erase what he did. At home, Eva kept talking about him. Drawing him. Wanting to FaceTime him before bed. Jules, too, though less vocal, was starting to mention Daddy more often. "Can Daddy come to the zoo with us next time?" I wasn't angry at them, I was terrified for them. Because they didn't see the manipulation. The slow, careful rewriting of what happened. They didn't know their father had let another woman wear my bathrobe, sleep in my house, feed them dinner, and then crawl into bed with him before I got home. But they loved him. Of course they did. And part of me still wanted to protect that illusion, for their sake. So I did what Adrian wasn't expecting. I invited him to dinner. Not alone. The kids were there. It was a Tuesday. I cooked pasta. I smiled. I asked about his work. And I watched him closely. He tried to play calm, casual, evolved. But I knew him. I saw how his hands trembled slightly when he poured the water. How his eyes flicked to the hallway, probably remembering all the times Claire had walked through it. After dinner, when the kids were brushing their teeth, he said, "I didn't think you'd ever invite me over again." I said, "I'm trying to co-parent." He nodded slowly. I meant what I said. About being better. About fixing this. I looked at him, and for once, I didn't flinch. I believe people can change, Adrian. But they have to name what they broke first. And you're still pretending it was just a bad decision. It wasn't. It was a betrayal so deep I had to rebuild my brain to understand it. He didn't respond. He just looked hollow. Before he left, he hugged Eva and Jules. I didn't stop him. But when he reached for me, just a gesture, a casual touch to my shoulder, I stepped back. "No," I said quietly. "You don't get that anymore." He nodded, embarrassed. "Right. Sorry." After he left, I sat in the kitchen in silence. There were crayon drawings on the table, half a glass of milk untouched, Eva's tiny socks under the chair. The house felt warm again, but not because of him. Because I had taken it back. And yet, the next day, I got an email from the school principal. Subject: urgent, incident involving unauthorized pickup attempt. Claire had shown up. Claimed she was still part of the children's lives. The secretary didn't let her take them, thank God. But she lingered outside the school gates for nearly 20 minutes before security asked her to leave. I forwarded the email to my lawyer immediately. She called me within 5 minutes. "She's unhinged," she said. "We're filing for a restraining order." I asked, "Do you think Adrian knew she'd do that?" There was a pause. "I think he's trying to act innocent now, but if she's still obsessed, it's because he kept feeding her attention. Until recently." My stomach sank. Again. The kids weren't safe until she was gone. And if Adrian was still communicating with her in secret, then this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I confronted Adrian 2 days after Claire showed up at the school. I didn't give him time to prepare, didn't text first. I showed up at his new apartment while the kids were with my mom, walked straight in when he opened the door, and said, "Are you still in contact with Claire?" He looked like a deer caught in headlights. "No," he said too quickly. "Of course not." I raised my phone and opened the school's security email again. Then why was she at Eva and Jules' school pretending she still has a right to pick them up? He ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know. I swear I didn't ask her to go." Maybe she thought. "You gave her the illusion she was still family," I cut in. "You let her be near our kids. You watched her brush Eva's hair, read to Jules, play mom. You made her feel like she had a place in this house. Now she can't let go. And we're the ones cleaning up your mess." He didn't deny it this time. He just sat down on the edge of the couch, face in his hands. I didn't think she'd take it this far. I wanted to slap him. But all I said was, "You never think that far." That's the problem. I left him there. Miserable. Good. He should sit in that guilt until it soaked through. Back at home, I called the lawyer again. We filed the emergency request for a restraining order. Luckily, Claire had already breached enough boundaries that the judge granted a temporary one until the hearing. I emailed the school, the daycare, even the pediatrician with copies. No contact. No access. No exceptions. That night, after putting the kids to bed, I sat alone in the living room and let the exhaustion hit me like a wave. I'd been operating in survival mode for so long I didn't even realize how much I'd hardened. Every move I made was calculated, defensive, prepared for war. But when I scrolled through my phone that night and found an old photo, me and Adrian holding newborn Eva at the hospital, her tiny fists clenched, both of us smiling like idiots, I broke. I cried for everything. For what we were. For what we became. For the version of myself that thought love would be enough. And then I looked around. The house was mine again. The air didn't smell like Claire's perfume anymore. Adrian's cologne wasn't soaked into the pillows. The guest room was empty, sheets stripped, door locked. I had survived the worst of it. But healing wasn't a straight line. Because just when I thought the storm was over, the final blow came out of nowhere. A friend sent me a screenshot. It was a Reddit post. Long, emotional. Titled, "I was the other woman, and I loved his kids like my own. Now I'm banned from seeing them." Claire had written it. She painted herself as a heartbroken nanny who had accidentally fallen back in love with the father of the children she cared for. She never used our names, but the details were there: Paris, 2 kids, divorced parents, vindictive ex-wife. The comments were what gutted me. "I feel for you. She sounds jealous. Honestly, you were probably a better mom than she was." Thousands of likes. She was rewriting the story. Again. And people believed her. I didn't respond. I didn't comment. I just saved everything. Sent it to my lawyer. Documented the post date and IP info. But something inside me cracked. Because no matter how much I protected my children, this woman still had a megaphone. And Adrian still had silence. He never defended me. Never posted a word to correct the record. That's when I knew, it wasn't just Claire I was fighting anymore. It was the entire system that lets men betray, disappear, and return rebranded while women are left to clean the blood off the floor. The next morning, I scheduled a full custody hearing. I was done sharing my children with a man who thought remorse was enough. He could redeem himself on his own time. But he wasn't taking my kids with him. The custody hearing was scheduled for a Friday morning. I barely slept the night before. My lawyer had prepared every document, every witness statement, every screenshot, but my heart wouldn't stop racing. Not because I thought I'd lose. But because I knew I was finally closing a chapter that had defined every second of my life for the past year. Adrian showed up alone. No lawyer. Just him, wearing a clean shirt, holding a thin folder like he was attending a parent-teacher conference. Calm, detached, polished. I could see right through it. The judge did too. He began by saying he accepted responsibility. That he had made severe errors in judgment. That he now understood the importance of clear boundaries between personal and family dynamics. His voice was steady, sincere-sounding, like a man reading from a prepared speech he'd practiced 100 times in the mirror. I stared at him the whole time. Because I realized something that made me go cold: he didn't care about the kids. Not really. Not like I did. He cared about not being seen as the villain. That was his only true motivation. Redemption wasn't for them, it was for his image. My lawyer didn't waste time. She brought up the unauthorized school pickup, the restraining order against Claire, the evidence of ongoing communication between them even after Adrian swore it was over. Then she submitted screenshots of Claire's Reddit post and outlined exactly how those details matched our private situation. Adrian didn't deny the post. He just looked down. The judge reviewed everything in silence. Then, she looked at me and said, "Miss Farrand, do you believe shared custody would place your children in emotional or physical danger?" I answered calmly. Yes. Because I no longer believe their father is capable of recognizing what's safe for them versus what's convenient for him. And that was it. The ruling came a week later, full legal and physical custody awarded to me. Adrian was granted 1 supervised visit per month, under observation. Claire was barred from any contact, direct or indirect, with the children. Any breach would result in criminal charges. I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow. Grateful, yes. Relieved. But mostly just emptied out, like someone who finally stepped out of a burning house and saw all the ashes left behind. Eva still asked about her dad sometimes. Less often now. Jules barely mentioned him anymore. I didn't badmouth him. I just told the truth, gently, That sometimes people you love make choices that make them unsafe to be around. That our job isn't to hate them, but to protect ourselves first. Months passed. The guest room became a storage space. Claire faded like a bad dream. Adrian moved to another city. I heard he got a new job, something about digital marketing. I didn't care. I rebuilt. I enrolled in night classes. I reconnected with my sister. I found a babysitter I trusted. I started sleeping through the night again. And one morning, while packing lunches, Eva asked, "Mom, do you think I'll be a good mom someday?" I paused. Then knelt down, looked her in the eyes, and said, "If you love your children more than anyone else in the world, even yourself sometimes, then yes. And if you're brave enough to walk away when someone hurts them, then you'll be better than good." She nodded and hugged me. That was the moment I realized I hadn't just survived. I'd broken the cycle. I still have days where I wonder how I didn't see it coming. How I let Claire into my house. How I shared a bed with a man who let another woman pretend to be me behind my back. But then I remember, I didn't fail. They did. And I chose to end it before my kids learned that betrayal was something you had to tolerate to keep the peace. So no, I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I'm just done. And for the first time in years, that feels like freedom. But sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet, I still wonder, how do I explain to my kids, when they're older, that love isn't always safe? Because I still don't know the answer.
Follow me for more stories.